Have you ever wondered how indifference could be the key to happiness? In this series, we will explain The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. None of us have gone through life without facing circumstances beyond our control, often negative and impactful. Today, we'll learn how to make the best out of these adverse situations. Welcome to Growth Galore. This is a summary of chapters 5 and 6 of The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck by Mark Manson. Grab your coffee or favorite drink, and let's enjoy. I am sure you've encountered situations in life beyond your control, which had a significant impact on your life and reduced your available options. For example, some people have lost limbs, others suffer from chronic illnesses, and some have lost their sight or hearing. These circumstances prevented them from pursuing certain jobs or careers, whether physically or in terms of relationships. In these cases, there are two aspects: blame and responsibility. I will teach you the difference between blaming your circumstances and the responsibility that falls on you. Mark says there are people who have blamed and continue to blame the circumstances beyond their control, which negatively impacted their lives. He tells you, regardless of what happened to you in your life that hurt you, limited your options, and affected you negatively, it is your responsibility to react to this situation. How you deal with these circumstances and situations, because once you face such a tough situation, you will have options, even if limited. At the very least, you will have two choices, either to give up or to fight to change these circumstances, or in other words, to survive them. Mark Manson gave an example of circumstances you can't control. Imagine one day you open your front door and find a baby in front of your house. He said this is a situation where you are not at fault at all, but now you have the responsibility to make a decision regarding this situation. Either you take the baby, adopt and raise it, and you will face many problems because of this decision, or you take the baby to an orphanage. This decision will also result in negative outcomes in the future, and the responsibility falls on you. Even if you close the door and leave the baby, this decision will lead to various future circumstances, and you will be the cause. The other example is no less realistic and logical than the first one, but it is more common. He mentioned the example of a judge in court. The judge presides over a case in which he has no personal involvement, neither with the first party nor with the second, and he has no connection to the crime committed, whether it's theft, murder, or any other crime. The judge has no relation to the case that happened. But it is his responsibility to make a decision and pass a judgment in this case, and the decision he makes will impact many events in the future. Whatever decision he makes, it will have an effect, and this is the responsibility Mark Manson talks about. So, dear follower, reflect this topic on yourself exactly. Yes, you have faced circumstances in your life beyond your control, circumstances that negatively affected you, limited your choices, and reduced the opportunities available to you in life. They may have affected you financially, physically, emotionally, or even socially. Yes, you have encountered tough situations, but you are responsible for your reaction to these situations. Either you give in to them or you look for ways to survive, no matter what it takes. Any decision you make at this moment will affect your future life, and there are countless real-life examples. I am sure you have faced similar situations in your life, some of which you gave up on, some you overcame, and some you found solutions for. If you take a moment and think about this topic and try to recall memories, you will find that none of us has not lost a father, a mother, a friend, a partner, a child, a job, a position, prestige, health, or anything. But despite these bad circumstances, you emerged from them and overcame them. William James is one of the people who faced very harsh circumstances in his life. From the moment he was born, This child was born into a wealthy family, and from birth, he suffered from many illnesses. First, an eye problem that made him blind for a period of his childhood. Second, a stomach illness that required him to follow a very strict diet. Third, hearing problems, severe back spasms that kept him confined to a chair for days without being able to move. As a result of these health issues, James spent most of his time at home, unable to make friends, unable to enjoy a fun childhood, and unable to do much in his life. William James suffered a lot in his life, and while sitting at home, he spent most of his time drawing and loved painting, dreaming of becoming one of the greatest painters in the world. Despite the difficult circumstances he lived in, he had very strong ambition. Unfortunately, William James failed to become a creative artist. He came from a wealthy family, and his brother achieved many successes. His brother became a well-known novelist, and his sister became a famous author. His father was ashamed of William because some wealthy families do not want any failure, even in their children. So his father tried to save him from the failure he was experiencing. He enrolled him in Harvard University in the field of medicine, and William began studying at this university without being convinced about medicine. But he thought, maybe this is the path where I will finally succeed. Indeed, William started studying at the university, experiencing both failure and success and suffering. But during the time he was studying, William felt that everything he was doing was fake and deceitful, and he was never convinced of what he was doing. Harvard? Medicine? But I'm not convinced. This is not what I want, he would say. He felt that if he achieved success, it would be for others and not for himself. This feeling was very bad, and William was aware of it, so he decided to take a bold step and leave Harvard University. He traveled to Brazil to live real adventures in the Amazon rainforest. Despite his poor health condition, he went and lived this experience. The illnesses hit him again, spasms, disorders, to the extent that he was on the verge of losing his life. Bedridden, yet miraculously, he survived. He faced a second calamity, spending months trying to return to his homeland, unable to do so. This experience was extremely harsh for William, but finally, he managed to return to his country where his father, utterly angry, received him. He fell into spirals of depression, to the point where he considered ending his life. His illnesses were the greatest barrier, and due to circumstances beyond his control, he was presented with choices. He says that before ending his life, he was listening to a philosopher during those days, and he listened for so long that the philosopher somewhat influenced him and gave him a final spark of hope. He said to himself, "I will give myself just 1 year starting from today. Either I will succeed or I will end my life directly." He said, "Now, I will take responsibility for everything that happens in my life, regardless of external circumstances." William James decided to take responsibility for a year. He said, "I will bear the responsibility for everything that happens in my life, regardless of the diseases I live with, and regardless of the circumstances beyond my control. I will be the one to take responsibility, and in just 1 year I will try to change my life with all the strength I possess. If I fail, then that is an inevitable failure, and I may end my life eventually." Indeed, what happened is what we know today. William James became a famous figure in American history to this day. William James is an American philosopher, historian, and psychologist, and he was the first psychologist to give courses in psychology. This is William James. This speech is true, and your life consists of choices that God has allowed for you, regardless of the circumstances. Everything you live today is 99% because of the decisions you made in the past. Look at your life today. I want you to look at your life today and see everything in it, negative and positive. Everything you live today is the result of decisions that were available to you in the past, and you made a certain decision about them. Be absolutely sure that everything you will live in the future depends on the choices that God has allowed for you and that you will make today. And as Mark Manson said, you are in a constant state of choice. Right now, as you watch this video, you have many options. To continue watching a movie on Netflix, to learn something that will benefit you in the future, or to take a step towards the life goal you want. Or you might try opening a store, or open your notebook and plan for your future, or apologize to someone you've wronged. The choices are many, and the decision you make affects your life today and will affect your future. You have the right to blame circumstances as much as you want, but the responsibility lies with you. Mark Manson says the fundamental difference between blame and responsibility is that blame is about things that happened in the past and are over, while responsibility is about things that will happen in the future. Chapter 6 title, You're Wrong and So Am I. The message he wants to convey in this chapter is to beware of believing that you're always right. Most of the time, the situation you're living in and believe you were right about or still are may be an illusion. The illusion of believing you're right when you're actually wrong. He says this approach is one of the best for awareness, realization, self-improvement, and even external circumstances. Let me give you a simple example. Imagine someone who owns a store, and despite the amount of advertising he does, the quality of the goods he sells, and the appearance of the store, he is unable to sell. When you talk to him, you find him completely convinced that he is right, that he has done all the possible reasons that would make his store succeed, yet it did not succeed, and he says, "I did everything and did not succeed." He believes that everything he does is right. As long as he holds this intellectual perspective, he will never reach the real mistake and will never improve his situation. This is an example, and there are many more. Some, for example, in their relationships with their life partner, see that their relationship with their partner is falling apart and say, "Everything I do is right? The mistake is not mine, but from my life partner or the circumstances." Beware of thinking you're right. Mark Manson says, always keep in mind that you might be wrong. Doubt every decision you make as a mistake. Doubt everything you've done before as a mistake. Once you doubt everything you do, you'll reach a better outcome. And he says, philosophically, there is no absolutely correct situation in this universe at all. I hope you understand the structure of this sentence. There is no absolute truth or absolute right. No human lives a 100% correct situation. This is what he wants to convey to you. But he says, there are situations that are less erroneous than others. He says, for example, you walk through life doing things you think are right, and after a while, you discover that you were wrong. Don't you think you're right? No, but you are less wrong than the situation before it. Once you realize this truth, and I agree with him on that, your situation will improve greatly. Always being skeptical of your situation, and that you might be the one in the wrong, helps you reduce mistakes. He mentioned a story where he says, "My girlfriend cheated on me, and the impact of this betrayal was very strong on my life. I started frequenting bars and drinking to excess, and I was very sad, and my life was disrupted in many ways, and I always blamed her. I ended my relationship with her, and after some time I tried to return to her." He says, "Imagine I was pitiful in every sense of the word, and I always blamed her for anything that happened in my life and for what happened in our relationship." He says, "Until I reached a stage of awareness and realization, and I said, I cannot live like this all my life. Impossible. I might be the one at fault," he says. He pointed the finger of blame at himself, accusing himself of being the reason she cheated on him. He says, "Imagine when I adopted this perspective, I found real flaws and reasons within myself that made me the cause of her infidelity." He convinced himself that she would not have cheated if there weren't flaws and mistakes in him. Of course, he never justified her infidelity. She remains at fault for the act of cheating. But he speaks of the causes, the mistakes that were in him, and that he believed were right in their relationship, which ultimately led to the infidelity. He says, as soon as you start doubting everything you think is right, you will reach very impressive and beautiful results. There is no absolute truth, no absolute right, ever. There is no completely correct situation, but it is less erroneous than the one before it. And this is a kind of beautiful realization. Mark talks about ancient times, mentioning that today we laugh at people who lived 500 years ago, mock the superstitions they believed in, and fully realize that their awareness was much less than ours, their understanding far less than ours. He says, I started to imagine the people who will come after 500 years and how they will laugh at our state and ignorance and the mistakes we live today. He says that one of the human traits is that their minds work on this pattern. They seek absolute truth and hate incomplete information. He says that whenever an event occurs in life, your mind tries to find reasons, puts them together, connects them in a certain way, and comes up with a state of absolute correctness, deceiving you into thinking you're right when you're wrong. Then he talks about a psychological experiment conducted on a group of people, where they would enter a person into an empty room with only one lamp and a button. They would tell him, every time you press the button and the lamp lights up, you get a point, and you have an hour. Try to collect as many points as possible, and in the end, you will get a prize. So the people would enter and press the button, and the lamp would not light up until after several presses. The person begins to analyze. What is the way that makes the lamp light up? Is it pressing the button every 5 minutes, or 5 consecutive button presses, or 2 presses, and so on? The person tries several possibilities, and one of these possibilities succeeds. The person or his mind deceives him into thinking that this method is correct, so he applies it again. And when the lamp does not light up, he tries pressing the button 3 times, then waits a minute, then presses again. He starts repeating this process, and each time he repeats it, he discovers that he was wrong and looks for a new way he believes is right. Mark mentions that some people started inventing strange methods. There was a girl who would jump and touch the ceiling several times, then press the button and the lamp would light up, and she believed that was the right way. He says she left the room exhausted, but in the end, they discovered that the lamp was lit randomly, and there was no specific pattern that allowed the lamp to light up. It was all random. But the minds of the people in the room deceived them into thinking that the specific way they pressed the button was what made the lamp light up, and that it was the correct way, and all this was empty talk. Mark says, always keep in mind that you are wrong, and so am I, and your mind will always try to gather information and events and connect them to create a state that deceives you into thinking you are right. But to be right, you must always believe that you are wrong. Let's summarize everything in short points. You will face circumstances in your life that are beyond your control and will. Yes, you have the right to blame them, but remember that you are responsible for your reaction to these situations, whether you surrender to them or make a change, and this is true, whether you like it or not. Beware of believing that you are always right. You might be wrong. In fact, you are wrong. Try to doubt everything you think is right. From there, you will reach the mistakes that cause something specific in your life to be disrupted or destroyed something specific in your life, and avoid repeating this mistake in the future. You will reach a state less erroneous than the one you are in today. Always remember that you are wrong, and so am I. And here ends the explanation of chapters 5 and 6 of the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. If you think there are people who could benefit from this video, please share it with them. The likes you give to this video will benefit us and motivate us to publish more valuable and useful videos. Wait for the next and final video from the book, The Subtle Art of Not Giving a Fuck. Thank you for listening attentively, and thank you for your invaluable time.